Greetings, my friends, and welcome back. Thank you for joining me for this. Today I'm going to answer a very common question when it comes to flex nib fountain pens. We've probably all heard them say that when you want a flex pen, a true flex fountain pen, you should just go for a vintage. The question always arises, why do modern manufacturers not produce pens that have similar quality of flex to the old ones? Most of you may have heard about the Magna Carta releasing their new flex pen, the Mag 600, and there's chatter about this pen being very close to the vintage flex nibs, and we're here today to experiment whether or not that argument holds any water against any of the true vintage flex pens. So today I have two of the vintage flex pens and a bonus one that I'm going to reveal in a second. The number one vintage flex pen that I am going to show you today is the Conklin Endura. I got this from Toronto Pen Show. It has what seems like is the number 6 nib. That's my favorite flex nib right now. And we're also going to compare it with my Waterman 452, which has a much smaller nib. Seems like a number 2. So these are the two vintage flex nibs that we're going to compare the pen to, the Magna Carta. The third one that I want to introduce is this little one. This is a very old Eversharp, seems like a pocket pen flex nib. So we're going to take a look at this, and last but not least we're going to take a look at a Frankenstein. The problem we have with vintage flex nibs is that, yes, I love this Conklin Endura, but because it's a vintage pen, you know what they say about putting any kinds of inks in there, so you're kind of limited to a few inks, the gentleman inks, like from Waterman, Pelican, and a few others. But you know, I want to put any ink that I want. I like the Irishizuku Momiji that's in here. So this is a Genhao 9019 that I fit a number 5 Waterman flex nib in here. It needed just a little bit of opening the nib in order to fit inside the feed, but once the nib and feed are married together like this, you will see that it's pretty much unstoppable. So we're gonna take a writing sample of each one of these pens. We'll put them side by side, and you and I will be the judge on how these compare favorably or otherwise. We'll get right into this. I already labeled this, so we're gonna try out these pens one at a time. And so without further ado, let's start with our Magna Carta. It's able to get some nice thin lines, so it would indicate that it maybe can make a good daily writer. But you can see that with a properly primed nib, it can put a pretty good size width, a pretty good width down. The problem with this Magna Carta is that the nibs get out of alignment. It's easy to put them back together, but it's super soft. That's very nice. Next we're going to try our Waterman 452. This Waterman has Serenity Blue in it. No problem. Very good line width. Beautiful thin lines. None of these pens can get a hairline, of course, but the Waterman is probably the best amongst these pens in terms of writing thin lines. If I go to quick, it continues and does not railroad. No railroading. That's the Waterman. Moving to the Conklin Endura. This is probably my most favorite flex nib. Same procedures. The Conklin has Pelican Brilliant Brown in it. You can see that you can probably put the thickest line of these pens Also can put thin lines, but not as thin as the Waterman's. Unstoppable. It's not leaking ink, but it definitely does not hold back, giving you ink when you press. And is very, very impressed by the Conklin. Moving on to the Gentleman. That means the Genho with a Waterman nib. Very thin lines, almost similar to the Waterman 452. The amount of spread that this Waterman nibs on the gin helping is able to achieve is actually scandalous. And you know what? I can do this without fear of breaking the nib, or breaking the feed, or breaking the body or the section, because all of those are replaceable. And this nib has that curve downwards. It gives a lot of confidence actually when you press on it. Snaps right back, and really good without hesitation. Super impressed. Let's just, for S's and G's, take this little for a test drive. What do you think? You think it can flex? Do you think it can flex? Let's look at it. Oh yeah, it can. Able to get pretty good lines, probably medium in wetness and thickness. And I actually like it quite a bit, and I don't want to mess it up. Despite being a super tiny little pen, it's doing a really good job if primed appropriately and has the right ink. This ink here is Parker Quink Blue Black. As a bonus, I have prepared the Montblanc 146 Solitaire with a flex nib. It's kind of like the regular 146 flex nib, still a little bit different, and the tip on this is medium. Again, if appropriately primed and has the right ink, it can give you very nice line variation. Super thin lines it can give. The 146s, that's the good thing about them, because of how extra fine they can go. They make great daily writers. No, pretty good. There's 146. So there we go. There is a comparison of 6 modern and vintage fountain pens. You see that the newer modern flex nibs close the gap almost, especially if you look at the Mag 600. It performs very, very well compared to the vintage counterparts. This brings us to our final decision making on my thoughts and recommendations on the choice of flex nib fountain pens. Let's start with the Mag 600. This is a very nice pen. It can achieve very good line variation, but it needs repeated priming and needs the wet ink, and it unfortunately still hard starts in railroads when you try to start it after a day or two of not using. So you have to negotiate with it. The other thing with the Mag 600 is that this is basically an unfinished product. What I mean is that the taper, for example, from the body to the grip section is very sharp. Like I keep feeling like it's going to hurt somebody. It's sharp and it can probably cut somebody. It is unpleasant to hold in hand for long periods of time, and the flex on this is so soft that it does not inspire much confidence. I'm worried that after a little bit of use, the tine might just splay upwards. It has not done it so far, but it will. And when I flex my pens, I flex them. I use them. I don't baby the pens, except for the Solitaire, because it's basically impossible to exchange the nib on this one to fix it if it breaks. So a little bit lack of confidence using this pen, and it feels like an unfinished product. The engraving of Magna Carta here is sharp. It's unfinished, unpolished. The body of the pen is unpolished. The converter here is disastrous. It's worst converter in the history of converters, so it needs a lot of work, but there's so much potential. I think this is the pen that can take on any of the vintage pens in terms of the flexibility of its nib. To me, this is a flex nib purchase and more than a pen. I wish I could put this nib on a different pen that is actually easier and friendlier to use, but it is what it is. It's a great pen. I think for around 200, it would be a good price for this. And this is now sold between $300 and $400. That's steep. It goes on sale sometimes for around $250, which makes it actually a good value. But I'm hoping that Magna Carta does some work on this and refines this, and the next version is a better pen, because this is not a good pen. It's a good nib. The Waterman, of course, is a Waterman, vintage Waterman, 452. There's very little to complain about this pen, aside from the fact that it is about 100 years old, and if it breaks or something happens to it, I do not possess the skills to fix any of the problems that this pen can have, like a SAC exchange, or the grip section leaking, or something breaking. I cannot fix any of those. I can polish the silver, that's about it, and I can use it very well. But the pen is marvelous. At around $400 to $500 though, it's pretty steep price to pay, so this is not in everybody's price range. So that takes us to the Conklin. This is a marvelous pen. I really like this. This is my favorite flex pen that I have, and I baby this actually a little bit, aside from all the flexing that I did. I take good care of it. Again, this is like around $500 to $600 if you're lucky to find one of the vintage ones, around 100 years old again. But this one is in pristine condition. I got it from Toronto Pen Show, and I'm going to keep this for a while. Again, an awesome flex nib. It's probably the flexiest of all of these nibs, but again, if something happens to it, needs a SAC replaced, or the nib breaks, or the feed breaks, I do not possess the skills to fix it, and it will need to go to a fountain pen hospital or something. That brings us to this little Eversharp. If you find one, get it. I got this for around $60, $65 from one of the second-hand websites. I saw I wrote once with an Eversharp Dory. Very nice nib. And when I saw this Eversharp posted, I thought I had a very good impression of Eversharp at that point. So I thought I'd give it a try. The price was fair enough. But when I got the pen, this was smaller than I anticipated. But the nib is such a marvelous nib. So if you have the right size hands, like small enough hands, that you can just put this in your purse and use it, it's definitely worth it. So highly recommend. That brings me to the Solitaire. This is more of a collector's pen. I write with it almost daily just for pleasure of writing. It's a great writer, but I really don't recommend this. It's around between $1,500 and $3,000 depending on where you look at it. And the nib on this can be had on 146 Flex for around $600 to $800. So it's similar nib. I don't recommend someone going and buying this unless you're specifically after this pen. That brings me to my Gentleman. This is the Jinhao with a Waterman nib. This is probably the best option amongst all these pens that I showed in terms of owning a vintage flex pen. The reason being that the nib here is not super expensive. You can probably find the 14 karat gold nib, Waterman nib. This is a number 5. You can probably buy this around $60 to $100. And then the Jinhao pen is, you can basically have it for free. Just send me a message. And the feed that comes on the Jinhao pen is next to literally unstoppable. It expresses ink when you want it to. So I have not seen many people have this combination in person or on any of the YouTube videos, but I very strongly encourage anyone interested in vintage flex nibs or flex nibs at all to consider this Waterman number 5 nib. Purchase it somewhere. If you find a number 5 Waterman flex nib, put it on a Jinhao 9019. That's all you need. But if you're into collecting or owning vintage fountain pens and you value the vintageness, definitely more than worth their price. And also the Mag 600 is probably the future of modern flex nibs, as long as they listen and do some refinement on their pens. I know that their pens are carried all over the place. Like, I think Gold Spot carries them. Now Penventure carries them. So they're dealing with the big retailers. There's no good reason they shouldn't have the budget or the the resources to work on this. This pen needs to improve fast because they may lose the market to I don't know who. So that brings us to the end of this video. I hope you find this video informative and entertaining. If you did, please let me know. If you guys have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask. I'll do my best to answer them in a timely fashion. Thank you for accompanying me, and we'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.